So welcome to Project Management 101. So this is a functional reference and a practical guide to the PMI methodology. Has anybody heard of the PMBOK before, the Project Management Body of Knowledge? It's about that thick, and it's an entire methodology of like 20 or 30 years of industry standard best practices, and there's no way you can consolidate that entire thing into a single training for a single hour. But I tried. So this is trying to gear this training reference more towards being a functional reference. Like, hey, when you're a project manager and you get to the point where you need to do this kind of kickoff call and you need to know what your agenda should be, use this as a reference for like an example of what you can do. So that's what I'm trying to do, is like functional, practical reference for how to do PMI stuff in an hour. Super high level overview. I can spend an hour on almost each one of these slides, but we're just going to do a high level overview. Okay, so if the button will go, there we go. Topics to cover. Project management theory, the academia, what it's about. Project management life cycle, like an overview of what a project looks like beginning to end. And then we'll go through some templates and examples along the way of what that looks like for functional reference. So to start off, project management theory. What the crap is project management? How does it differ than task management? Project management is a discipline for how to manage work versus task management, which is a skill for how to execute the work that needs to be done. So if we look at the PMBOK guide, its definition is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. That's the official definition. I would rephrase it to something simple like project management is the high-level management technique to ensure that tasks are done with the proper time, budget, and quality. Let's just make sure that we get crap done the right way. And to learn more about that, there is an entire industry standard methodology from the Project Management Institute that this training is based off of. For task management, task management is the process by which a person captures, organizes, prioritizes, and executes on the work that they do each day. Managing the individual tasks that need to be done as a resource, either on a project team as part of a project, or just other miscellaneous work, because as workers, you don't have only project work that you work on. Sometimes it's just other tasks. And there's a complementary training about getting things done, the GTD methodology, called effective task management, that we're not going to go into today, but it's on the list of things that we could do as a guild at some point if you guys are interested. It's another one of my passions, the first one of these big trainings that I did, because it was just a lot of stuff that I was passionate about, how to do task management. But they are different functions. So we're not talking about how do we get stuff done and do tasks. We're talking today about project management. How do you coordinate getting stuff done with a team, that kind of stuff. And welcome, Ryan. And Dave, who walked in as well. We're recording this. I didn't get an intro. You get a thank you as well. We're recording this one, but feel free to just ask questions and keep the conversation going. You don't have to be deadpan just because we're recording. When should project management be used? Which approach should a project manager or should managers take? So for task management, you do it for simpler work, like for a handful of related actions that can all be completed by the same person in a short period of time. Manager just assigns, do this thing, and you get it done. But for project management, it's much better for complex work, like lots of actions, multiple resources, impacting multiple stakeholders, has a scheduled deadlines, lots of requirements, complex scope, fixed budget of what we need to do by when. Like, there's a lot more to it. It should be treated like a project. Spitting. This is more of a slide for like Clint and Coop and KD to know, like, when they've got major things that need to be done, do I just assign this out or do I actually commission this as a project? And that's what I'm trying to do, working with Clint, to be able to help have a project management mindset on when do we handle the right things with the right level of complexity. Project management is for the much more complex stuff because it's got a lot of ceremony around the right way to get things done and learn from the mistakes of others in the past.
And can I add to that? Like,
sure.
Is there also a risk of like it's just taking a lot longer than it needs to? If it can be handled with tasks, then there's the overhead of all that. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anytime there's additional complexity in the work that needs to be done, additional process and structure and ceremony around project management is helpful. Okay, what happens without project management? What are some of the common problems? Lack of planning, lack of visibility, lack of communication, miscommunication, missed expectations, missed requirements, scope omissions, scope creep, poor use of time, missed deadlines, exceed budget, emergency heroics, missed target objectives, poor quality outcomes, and loss of trust.
As we know it.
Sound familiar? These sound very familiar.
Yeah.
They happen on projects that are managed too.
Yes,
They do happen on
which is
projects
part of the
that
point.
Good.
Not every project that uses project management will be free of these problems, but projects have a significantly fewer problems when following best practices because people have dealt with these things before. There's ways to deal with not having these same problems if we just follow the best practices. That's what best practices are all about. People had these problems and we came up with better stuff. So it was a good point. I'm glad you made it, Keith. So why do project management? Project management as a methodology comes from years of people struggling to get things done, having all those failures that we just talked about, learning from those failures, and then establishing best practices like the project management body of knowledge to more consistently drive project success through continuous improvement. The point here is, why make the same mistakes when you can learn from the wisdom of others? And there's literally an entire manual about how do you do project management, learning from the mistakes of others and what they figured out that works better. And that's what the whole project management methodology is. We've had problems before. Let's not make those same mistakes. Let's learn from it. Any questions, comments, additions? Okay, so that's the theory part. Let's talk a little bit about just some of the functions like project roles. There's a project sponsor, project owner, project manager, business analyst, and project team. There's lots of other roles, but these were the ones I thought were most relevant for us here at Alianza. The project sponsor is the person, often a manager or an executive, who provides resources like budget and project team and support, and is also accountable for enabling success. This is like Coop for the onboarding project or Clint for our product and development process improvement project. Like these are the high-level executive team peeps. Project owner is the person who directly owns and actively oversees the project, attends the coordination meetings, and ultimately completes the project survey. So in the improve onboarding inputs and outputs project, Coop is actively involved. He comes every week. He's not just the sponsor, but he's also the project owner. But in the end user product documentation, Coop is the sponsor, but he's not the project owner. I'm the project owner because Coop's not involved actively every week with those things. So that's kind of how we differentiate project sponsor versus owner. It's just nuance and we determine it every project and there's no hard guidelines, but that's the best I was able to come up with there. So the sponsor and the owner often end up being the same person, and that's okay. Just make sure that you're aware of which hats people wear. Project manager is the person assigned to lead the project team that is responsible for achieving the business objectives. Business analyst is the person who helps identify the business case, business requirements, scope of the project, functions of, and also functions as the technical expert in the details about whatever you're working about. And the BA and the PM also often end up being the same person, and that's okay. And the project team, a set of individuals who support the project manager in performing the work of the project to achieve its objectives. Most of the time, projects are not single thing, a person. You got to have a project team you work with. Again, this is from my perspective and what I've gone through in my career. Any questions, comments, disagreements?
Is it typical to see one person assume multiple roles?
Often, yes. Especially in a small company where you have less people, people wear multiple hats. It's just a small company.
You wear all 5 hats.
I have a lot of hats. Just saying. Any other questions, comments? Cool. So as a side note, this slide is here as a functional reference so that when you're going through a project charter that we'll talk about later, and you get to the point where your project rolls and you're like, project sponsor, what the crap was that about? Like, how do we determine who that should be? You go back to the slide, you look at the definitions, it helps to kind of figure things out. That's what these slides are intended for, is like functional reference to help you as you go through the process of doing a project.
And I like this on that, Ryan, that the word responsible only shows up under the project manager.
Yes.
They're just the one that's accountable.
They're the bottom line.
Yeah.
Like, if the project is successful, it's thanks to the project manager. If the project is not successful, you hold the project manager accountable. They're the ones accountable. Okay, project life cycle. A typical life cycle of a project. This is just a really long bullet list. And then we'll go through each one of these in detail for the rest of the slides in the presentation. A new project is prioritized by the project sponsor. Hey, we should do this customer API migration project, which is the next one coming up. A new business analyst, or a business analyst does a project intake to capture the problem statement, which often ends up just being the person running the project. And just try and figure out what this thing is. Like, what is this customer API migration? The project manager then schedules a project kickoff meeting with the designated stakeholders to coordinate, okay, what is this that we're going to do and how are we going to do it? Project manager holds the project kickoff meeting to start filling out a project charter, like get me the details. Project manager schedules a weekly project coordination meeting with the team to be able to continue working through the project. Project manager continues kickoff meetings as necessary until you complete the project charter. Normally it's about 2 kickoff meetings, 2 coordination meetings to get a project charter done. Or 1 2-hour session. I've done that too. Project sponsors finally approves the project charter as documented once they give their stamp of approval. Project manager creates project schedule from deliverables and milestones in the charter. So we want to do these basic things. How do we make sure that we get all the tasks to get those deliverables and milestones done? Team does the task breakdown of the deliverables and milestones in the project schedule. So you've got the more robust project schedule. Now let's break it out and get all the tasks, the work breakdown structure, they call it. Project team starts executing on the tasks as defined in the project schedule. Project manager monitors the performance and the progress of the project task execution using the project schedule as their core tool for that. Project status updates are provided to the stakeholders as needed, like weekly status updates, meeting notes from meetings, that kind of stuff. Project tasks are completed on the project schedule. That's where we're done with the project, but we're not quite done. Project manager closes out the project and wraps up the project assets, just make sure that everything got wrapped up and the reporting's right and stuff. And then a project feedback survey is completed by the project owner just to be able to get, continual feedback about what went well, what can we do better, that kind of stuff. That's the life cycle of a project in a nutshell. Questions, comments? I have a few comments, which is, this doesn't accurately represent every type of project. Software development projects don't follow this exact same type of project logic, but it's very similar. There's differences, like they don't create a project charter, maybe they create an epic and they do user stories instead of a project schedule. Like there's nuanced differences between the way that we do software development project management versus what I'm doing, and I created this more for my team and then I'm just sharing it with you guys, which covers more, how do you do these weird miscellaneous things in the middle of the company that just need to be done, these things that don't have set structure, like how often are we going to be doing customer API migrations? Well, we don't have a set structure. We just figure it out, put it together a project, do whatever needs to be done. So this is for those kinds of projects. And that's the training that I'm giving is how do you do these business operations type projects? I realize that it's not the same as software projects, and I'm okay with that. I'm just calling it out.
Yeah, I was actually going to want Camille. I'm curious how close this aligns with when you do projects from your team.
So some things we do and some things we don't do and can't really do because a lot of our projects fall within the same type of scope. Do we have charters? Yes. Do we fill out those charters as a kickoff call? Yes. But we don't have, so one of the big differences here is project managers often get to be business analysts, meaning that they are the technical knowledge holder of things and can build that out. Would you trust me
No, I don't at all.
Exactly. I don't have that skill set to say I can be your business analyst and be able to accurately get the technical details that you're going to need to make some of these projects successful.
Yeah,
So,
and neither does Alianza.
yeah, well,
Have
there's
that, right?
a few
And some-
people.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying
Well,
sometimes.
you're not a business analyst.
Well, for some of the details that we rely on our customers actually provide that detail.
Well, and that's as I say, some of these, like a lot of our project coordination meetings, things to get the tasks that need to be completed don't come from internal. Because we have a standard generic, hey, here's what happens internal. They come from our customers.
Yeah.
Here's what it actually looks like. So it's kind of the other side of the realm. Yeah, so a lot of these we do, and other ones, they are different than exactly how we find.
Yeah. And I'm not going to make the assumption that what I have in this training and what I have listed here and the stuff that I'm going to go over is the right solution to every project scenario. Like,
yeah, I think it's great, Brian. I'm just kind of just for the conversation. I'd love to hear like how we, what do we do when we engage like a third party if the business analysts or at least one of the business analyst resources has to live inside our.
This is why we brought product or Overwatch over to our side, because right now there is nobody there on our side that has the product business analyst technical know-how to be able to fill that gap. So that's what Steve and Warner are doing now, is filling that huge hole.
the simple answer I would give to your question, Ryan, is you figure out exactly what you're supposed to be doing, like the realms of the project charter, what we're going to do, and then you just start working through the details, and you will have to pull additional project team members. You'll have to expand the tasks to be able to, check for the new scope that needs to happen. You just coordinate and adjust as you go. There's no silver bullet. You guys ready? We're going to dive into all of these. Each of the next slides goes into these in more detail.
So one of the things that PMBOK calls out pretty explicitly at the beginning is that the project, by its nature, is something that it's like a unique offering.
Mm-hmm.
You're developing something new, and then second to that, it's got a distinct start and end date.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people tend to want to just cram everything into this project management methodology, but you have to find the right project.
We have multiple projects within our so I'll create the project plan for this one specific onboarding, but within it, we'll have multiple other projects that make that up because the necessary development of the SIP trunking, those are
Because they
that's
have
a
the
huge epic all in its own with multiple stories and projects.
When they have a start and end date and they have their
Yeah.
specific, they match those criteria.
And so for us, it's multiple projects that are being ran within multiple projects, and I'm not necessarily the owner on some of those middle projects. I'm just tracking the start and end date on the overall project.
Those are some great additions I'm going to throw in this training because I'd forgotten about some of those points. And those are key methodology things or key theory things that I hadn't had captured. There's a distinct difference between a project that has a start and an end date and specific success criteria and a program or a business operational function that's something that you hire a manager and they own and improve over time that doesn't have an end date. That's not a project. Program management is very much different than project management. I'm just talking about the short, succinct box time frame deliverables that you can do. That's project management. Okay, any other thoughts, comments? All right, here we go. Templates and examples. So where are templates stored? And again, this is mostly for my team, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea. So we keep everything in the Dropbox Alianza AZ projects folder. And there's hyperlink in this training that will take you to the online Dropbox location. Like if you click on any of these things that have blue boxes, take you to those areas and locations. Tip, it's best to create a shortcut directly to this Dropbox folder in Windows or in Mac OS X for easy reference, like put it in your quick links just because it's easy to get to if you're going to be working a lot in there. Where are project files stored? Well, it's in the AZ projects folder as well, but there's folders as well as the files and templates. So the improve onboarding inputs and outputs folder is there and all the project assets are there.
And good to point out though, this is just for the enterprise projects. We're not considering the onboarding projects and they're not going in this area.
Just business operations. I realize there's a few different areas. And I thought I had something in here that talked about the different areas, but I'm going to throw that back in here. Split between business operations, product, onboarding. Okay. Once started, a folder will be created with each new operational efficiency project or program project. That's the stuff in the business operations world in that AZ projects folder. And that's it. What are the file naming conventions? It's best to use underscores in the file and folder names instead of spaces to make hyperlinks more legible and shorter. And some systems have URL character limits that make that a requirement. So it's just a best practice. For example, if you have example file with spaces in the title, it looks like that, which is really hard to read. But if you have example file with underscores in the title, it looks like that, which is a whole lot easier to read. And it's shorter, not that much shorter, but it's a best practice that I like to at least work with my team. And that's why. Template files should use the following naming syntax, just the template name, dash, and then the project name, because you're gonna have lots of different projects and you're gonna have lots of different customers. It's good to just have some way of doing it. For example, project charter for improve onboarding inputs and outputs. Welcome, guys.
Sorry, product meeting.
It's okay, we got the recording. You can figure out what you missed at the beginning.
Just training.
It's
also recorded that you're late.
Yes.
Oh.
Let it be known on the record, Steve and Matt were late.
That guy's a jerk. I meant Matt.
Okay, how is a project prioritized? Oh, here's that piece. So there's the operational efficiency program, customer onboarding, and product and development. Three different types of project management we do here. So the operational efficiency program, possible projects are listed on the operational efficiency program dashboard and prioritized in quarterly planning. It's the enterprise project management stuff. Customer onboarding, so projects are normally prioritized on the first in, first out order as sales come in. You just do them as they go. And product development is product and development releases are prioritized based on the product roadmap. Like what do we want to accomplish? What do we want to do? Different types of projects. So when it comes to prioritization, it depends on the project. How do you schedule a project intake? So meeting invite template, here's one that you can use. So, you've got your initial stakeholders that you've identified, come on, where's my mouse? There we go. The initial people talking to you about this so you can do the intake, like the executive that tells you want to do this new customer API migration. Do project intake and then the project name, whatever you come up with. It's best to meet in a conference room so that you have the time and the resources and the whiteboard and whatever you need to and the privacy. And add a Zoom meeting for remote attendees if there are going to be any. Purpose, do an intake for the new project, whatever you think the name might be, and it normally changes once or twice. Deliverables, meeting notes, and the problem statement. The agenda would be, what is the problem we are trying to solve? Who are the stakeholders affected by this problem? What is the impact of the problem for each stakeholder? And what would be a successful solution? Like, what are the key benefits? And it's important to update all the areas in yellow to be whatever is specific for yours, including create a problem statement, save it in the new project folder, and add a hyperlink to this invite so that you have it already ready for the meeting. That's project intakes that you would go through. So what is a problem statement? Because that's what we're going to go over in this meeting. The purpose of the problem statement is to A, state the business need, B, identify the stakeholders, and 3, briefly describe the positive impact the business needs will have to this have on those stakeholders. This is basically what a problem statement table simply looks like. It's just these 4 questions, you fill in the box. It's not a totally open-ended conversation. It's just help me understand these specific areas, these 4 questions. I'll let you digest this for a sec. Any questions here about problem statements?
It almost takes the form of a user story if you read it through.
Yes, it's very similar.
Which I like.
But it's a way that you can do user story type stuff in an enterprise fashion, enterprise project management. And some tips, keep it short. Don't suggest a solution or a tactic. The problem statement should lend itself to many solutions. Don't tell the developers what they're going to build, kind of thing. Think about the major challenge and what the goal or aspirations are. This is the highest level conversation about the project. Just what is it? What are we trying to do? Who's affected? And what do we want this to accomplish? Don't get into the weeds. Keep it high level. And then we can drill in from there. Okay, any other questions?
Why do you think there's value in staying so high level in that first meeting? Because there are a lot of projects that there's a presumptive solution.
Yeah. Part of the reason why is because if you start from the top and you're inclusive of all the things from the top level, if you spend enough high level thinking time, then it helps you make sure that you don't get pigeonholed into something and completely forget about something off to the side. So you need to kind of take it a chunk down as you go. I'm a details guy. I love living in the weeds and jumping down rat holes. And so I will naturally just start grinding into the solution as soon as somebody starts talking to me about something. I've had to learn this. I have to pull myself out of the weeds, think high level, think a little deeper, and then grind through the weeds. And it's saved me so many times I can't count. This does not come naturally to me. I have to force myself to do this, and I have to force other people to do this sometimes, because Clint's just like, well, why can't we just do this E911 migration? Let's just do it. It's only these tasks. And it's like there's more to it. We have to make sure that we know how this all needs to happen. So it's hard. It's not natural, but it's definitely a payoff worth doing.
Besides when you do that, you get into your own solution, what you have in your mind, and without using the whole power of many people thinking on different contexts.
Yeah. Take advantage of your project team. Yeah.
Well, you lose potential solutions. I mean, sometimes it is just like, you're like, we're not going to reinvent the wheel on some of these things, but it's good to like start out and like have that conversation and make sure people agree with that. The other thing is like you lose the opportunity for people to get onboarded with the problem. Because if you just come with them with a solution, then it's a lot harder to be like, okay, does everyone understand? They're like, well, you're just telling us what to do. And
You sell the problem.
yeah. Like their brains kind of turn off. You lose that ability to really like think like, well, what really is the problem? The other thing is when I get asked sometimes for a very prescriptive solution, oftentimes people don't actually understand the problem. Like they haven't asked about that. Like I've been asked to design things. It's been like, can you give us a product that looks just like this other thing? And it's like, well, you have no idea what kind of problems are being solved by that thing. You're just asking for a feature, right?
Yeah.
So it actually, even if you do go down like, yeah, you know what, this is like pretty standard, we need to do this, but people should go like, well, understand why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I think the other thing maybe to stay high level is we all go into, this is a tendency, we go into meetings and maybe like an example, Werner's there. And we know Werner's probably going to have this figured out. But if we stay high level, we can at least collect potential solutions that, and figure out what's an assumption or not. Right? Maybe Werner's assuming something is there. And it's human nature, like people in a meeting with you, they know you've been here for 13 years. But we should challenge assumptions, and staying high level at least to start, gets us there.
Well, at the very least, it educates us.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This is part of the learning process. You have to bring the whole project team up to the speed about what the problem is and what we're doing and why we're doing it. Like there's benefit to it that doesn't seem immediately obvious. Anything else?
The idea of the last item, a successful solution, would to list the way that we can measure whether the project was actually successful at the end or not, empirically.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely in the project schedule, if you can come to that level of detail, I'm sorry, definitely in the project charter, but if you can get to that level of detail here, that's great. Sometimes it's a little hard to figure out what that's going to be. But yes, if you can come up with success criteria that's definable and measurable, that's great stuff to have as well in the successful solution definition.
Feels like you should really have a project that doesn't have that.
Yeah, so what's the purpose of that? I can't, because I think where you're going with the purpose of that last statement should be to say, if we agree that that statement is now true, then we won. No matter what the solution was, it's not necessarily acceptance criteria at that point.
Success criteria.
It's just, it's like a success statement, right?
Yeah.
Success criteria is good.
But I think the point, like your problem statement probably evolves, right? You don't know, you might not know every success criteria that you're going to put in the charter. This is just your initial problem statement that's going to evolve.
Customers are now using our new version of APIs.
Yeah.
That's that's where the goal is, right? Like, just to be obvious. Win the game.
Going to the next. By the way, I like the conversation. This is why we have a guild to go over this kind of stuff, because it's useful.
That's a good question.
How do you effectively run a meeting? See, effective meeting management training. I'm not going to go over how you do all of this stuff. There is a whole training about it. We're going over it on Monday. Camille and I, anybody else that wants to join, I posted it in the Project Management Guild meeting. I added you guys as optionals. It's one of my favorites. Basically, how do you use OneNote and be effective in note-taking stuff? She was asking me questions. So basically, the highlights are you schedule the meeting.
Yeah, it was.
Schedule the meeting, you prepare for the meeting, you start the meeting, you run the meeting, you take notes in the meeting, you capture the task assignments, you send out the notes to attendees. It's pretty simple. There's a lot of best practices I've learned for how to do it well, not just do it. Okay. How do you schedule a project kickoff meeting? Here's another template. It's very much like the intake meeting, but it's got different questions. I'll just jump to that. What are we doing with this project? Basically the question for, let's fill out the project charter with the summary, the business case, the scope, the success criteria, deliverables, milestones. When should we plan on doing the weekly project coordination meeting? Like what day and time is going to work for us to continue working together? And what are the next steps? Just what task assignments do we need to do moving forward? And you got to update all these things and add a project charter, like create a project charter, then create this meeting, then send the meeting out. So you've already got a link to the project charter ready to go. Any questions here? By the way, in blue here, suggested times is 10 or 11 a.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, because nobody likes meetings on Mondays as much, and people are pretty fried out by the time they get to Fridays. It's not good to do coordination meetings any other days than like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And 10 or 11 in the morning, people have figured out what they're doing in the morning. They have time to be able to think, but they haven't gotten into their lunch coma in the afternoon yet. So that's kind of ideal times that I've seen. Camille's whispering about me.
I was telling him we do these just so you know.
Bragging to me.
Good. All right, so that's the project kickoff basics. What is a project charter then? This is one of the core things you need to understand with project management. Here's a high-level screenshot of what it is, and you can click on it to go to our project charter. A project charter is useful for clarifying and thinking through the project at the beginning and making sure that the project manager is aligned with the expectations of the project sponsor. That's the biggest thing that I see you get from having a project charter. Table of contents, executive summary, like a 30-second elevator pitch, business or project purpose or the business case, like if there's any ROI that you're going to drive, project description, which has a lot of sections like the preliminary scope statement, what's in and out of scope, the current state and historical context to help make sure that people understand like what this problem is, where it came from. The system's affected if there's going to be many. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. The success criteria, like defining what this is really going to be and being as metric specific as possible. Like how do we measure this the right way? Have that conversation. Related strategic goals, if this is aligned to our improve operational efficiency project, our goals as a company, it's good to help people make the connections that, this really does have to do with that thing that we decided at the beginning of the year we're doing. And assumptions and dependencies, if there are things that this project is only going to work assuming that this is actually the case, and if that changes, this whole project could be different. It's good to think through those kinds of things beforehand. Also good to go through the risks, like a mini risk registry, get some project deliverables and milestones, like we need to create this thing, like a deliverable is something that has a hyperlink to it, you can actually point to a thing, and a milestone is just we accomplished something at a given date, like we did something by a certain time. This is not individual task level detail. You intentionally stay out of that. That's for later. But this is just what needs to be done and what milestones need to be met. Project roles, who's going to be involved, what their roles are going to be. We talked about the roles title project slide earlier. The communication plan, how do we plan on keeping everybody up to speed? Is that just a weekly coordination meeting and a weekly status update, or is it going to be different, more or less than that? Project completion, just planning at the beginning for how we're going to close this thing out, like who's going to own, I have it, there we go, owner of the project deliverables, who's going to support the processes if there are any, who do we send the feedback survey to at the end, and then finally, once all that stuff's been flushed out, which normally takes about 2 meetings or 2 hours of work to be able to fill that all out, you get final approval from the project sponsor and say, is this exactly what you want us to do, and the bounds within that we're going to do this project. And as soon as they say yes, then we start doing the work. Questions, comments?
Can I say, there's even like, I think you've included what is in a project charter, and I think you've explained it really well. Another way I like to look at a project charter is and I've written this down, it's a document issued by the project initiator or sponsor that formally authorizes the existence of a project. And that's really, you're creating it to say, we have a project, this is going to be a project, and then secondarily, it provides you as a project manager with the authority to apply organizational resources towards that project. So there's a lot of details to the project charter that are great and included, but it really is a contract between you and a sponsor to say, hey, we have a project and I can start working on it.
Yes.
By working on a project, you're already using the company's resources.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's money.
Yeah.
Time. What's that?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's also something like if somebody's trying to pull you into a project and you haven't heard about it, like you can go to the project charter and learn about it.
Yep. Which is important when you have new project team members. It's like, hey, look this over so you can know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. The questions, comments?
Yeah, that's like to hear people's ideas on what, the scope of the charter and how that relates to the size of a project, the expected size of a project. I think sometimes the charter feels to me like there is man, is there really like this minimum 6 hours of work for any project? Because some projects might just be 6 hours of work, and a project charter, they're like filling this all out, completing it is, I don't know, 6 hours is reasonable, but feels like 6 hours of work for somebody.
Normally I do a problem statement, like an intake in like a half hour, and then the project charter I could normally go through in about 2 hours. I've never really had anything that takes more than like 3. Say what?
How many people are involved in those?
Whoever needs to be.
It's not really what I mean, but there's a certain, I'm less concerned about the real number, but there is
Sure.
an overhead there.
Yeah.
But where do you find that there's a balance, and let some people's opinions on, is there a time and a place for a more simplified charter?
Yeah.
And when, and what are some ideas that people have seen succeed in kind of deciding this is probably small enough that we don't want to do a full charter?
With the onboardings obviously we signed a contract. No one's saying, yeah, I buy off on this project. They might be buying off on features or development, but the project itself is already bought off on with the signature. My charter is not nearly as long unless there are, major technical details that we've agreed to. Most of my charters are like a page.
You still have a formal charter document?
Yeah, we have it in Confluence. Mine's way more. In fact, I tried to use this, but it's
too much.
Yeah, it's too much for an onboarding. It's just so generic 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and onboardings have the advantage of being the same type of structure, doing the same kind of outputs. Like most of these questions are pretty much the same every time, and there's no value to go through them.
In our weekly meetings, like you just said, well, how many people need to be there? I invite when we keep people over the department, and I usually excuse them first. Hey, Steven, you know that you got these JRE tunnels, right? Okay, you can leave because you don't need to be in there.
For the whole thing.
For when my team goes through the millions of tasks that we own.
Yeah. And normally the project charter is only something that's really like most useful between the project manager and the project sponsor. Like this is how do we make sure that we know exactly what we're going to do before we get the rest of the project team involved. Sometimes you involve a greater project team because the overarching initiative is going to take more input than just what the project sponsor knows. Like the project sponsor knows that we need to do a customer API migration, but I'm not going to do an entire project charter without involving somebody who knows what the API is about and what we're going to have to deal with. What are the risks and what are the implications? What's in scope? So you only invite as many people to the project creation, like the kickoff, as you think is feasible, and you define who those people are in the problem intake. Like who are the stakeholders we need to have involved? You just slowly grow it out as you need to, because you don't want to waste too many project resources time.
On the other hand, our projects, they're all very similar, but every customer is unique, and we're trying to capture that uniqueness in that charter, so that we can come back and say, this customer flavor is this, and their challenges and bringing them on board are this, so we can account for them.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mentioned, Higgins, I think one of the things that you brought up, a project charter is not your project plan. There's a lot of detail in the plan, but you create that after. A project charter is high level. It's something you consistently go back to for alignment to make sure that you're still on course with what you signed with the sponsor.
I like the alignment. So it's kind of like what I'm hearing is its purpose is really to maintain alignment with all the stakeholders, to justify the resource expense, and as a shortcut to get people up to speed on where the project. Yeah, I mean, it's really that's kind of.
It's a good summary.
Yeah, it's really just
that
those
is.
two.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, another answer to the question you asked earlier is, do we really need this much? For enterprise project management, where we're tackling things that we really don't know, that's not as scripted as an onboarding project, it's really helpful to go through this stuff. But even then, the last one that I just did, we did the intake and the project kickoff for the Established Business Intelligence Strategy and Vision project that we're doing for this quarter. And we got through and we threw a whole bunch of stuff on the board, and we realized that the scope of this project for this quarter is just to define the strategy. And so we ran through the project charter in like an hour and 10 minutes, because it's just like, all we're doing is getting a team together to be able to put together what our strategy is going to be. It doesn't need to be that much bigger. So going through a project charter also helps you determine what's the appropriate scope for this thing. Because no, it doesn't make sense for us to start doing any BI until we have our project strategy and vision, and we get Frank, the new data guy, in, and we can figure those things out. So we used it to make the project simpler, and it wasn't as complex. And that helped too. Okay. Good conversation, but we only got 13 minutes left. This is one of the most important pieces, so I'm glad we spent this much time on it. How do you schedule a weekly project coordination meeting? Oh, there's a template, and you fill stuff out. And in this one, you want to make sure that you have a project schedule built beforehand in Smartsheet so that you can link it to it, so you can set it off and you have it ready in the meeting. What is a project schedule? Once the project charter is approved, the deliverables and milestones section is used to create the outline of the project schedule in Smartsheet. At least that's what we do on our team. So here's a screenshot, an example, and you can get to the actual project schedule. You can see like the intake, the planning and documentation, the execution, the closing. It's the basic project schedule. New Smartsheets need to be created by a licensed user. So if you want one, you have to check with somebody who has a license. There's a KV article about it. Why use a project schedule? It helps break down large chunks of work into assignable tasks. They call that WBS, or the work breakdown structure, where we say, if we want to do this deliverable, we're going to have to do these 10 things, and here's the few people who decide to do them, and here's how, their predecessory order and all that stuff, like the details of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. You can also keep track of the overall time frame for the completing the project. If you know that things should take this long, we're going to get a target date of this, or we have to work back from this date, so we're going to adjust scope or add people in as needs be. It's good for conditional formatting to visually indicate dates. Something that's nice about Smartsheet is you can say, oh, this one's in red. We should have got it done. It didn't get done. Do we need to readjust it? Or this thing's coming up this week. We should talk about it this week. So you can see conditional formatting. There's some of the rules that I see are helpful in Smartsheet. And we already have them baked into the templates, which makes it nice. Smartsheets can be shared with anyone, which is helpful. So you can send it to whoever you want to. They just get a free licensed user. They can participate. They can edit. Resources can track their own tasks for each project. So there's a My Tasks report that actually allows you to just go in, and whoever you are as a user, if you have a task assigned to you on a smart sheet anywhere, it will show you on your report, which is kind of cool. Hold project team accountable each week for their specific tasks. So if you use the project schedule as the core deliverable for your coordination meetings, and you bring it up every week, and you look through who's got what done, and you make sure the dates still line up, and you figure out who's going to do what, and you use that as your key coordination tool, it really helps to make sure that you can hold people accountable, because they know that next week you're going to come and we're going to ask the questions and we're going to look at it. Everybody's going to hold you accountable for getting your work done. Real-time visibility by the project sponsor about the project status updates. If you've ever had Clint ask you about something that's going on some project like I get all the time, it's easy to just say, well, let's pull up the project schedule and see, and you can find any answer you need to whenever you want to. Sometimes they're going to ask you anyway, but it's great for them to be able to have the option to see. So that's why I use a project schedule. Any other questions or mentions about project schedules?
Sometimes as well from project schedule, you can get the critical path of tasks.
Exactly.
Which ones are on hold, make sure they are not behind schedule.
Yep. It's essential for keeping track of the overall time frame for the completion of the project.
Recognition of the most important aspects that are going to delay.
Yep. Again, you could spend an entire hour just going over project scheduling basics in like, 1, 2, and 3 level advanced, and there's all sorts of stuff, but we'll stop there. What is a weekly status update email? Each week, you should plan to clean up the project, update the project schedule, and inform all the project stakeholders about the progress of the project. Keep people informed. This weekly email serves as a good high-level update to keep project sponsors, project owner, and other stakeholders up to date. So here's a simple template. Here's the project name. Here are the recent accomplishments we did, top 3. Here are the future plans that we did, and here's a link to the previous updates if you want to see them. Something like that, something simple. And on this one, you want to update, add all the pieces in there, add your accomplishments, remove your signature at the bottom, because whenever you do a template, it adds it to the bottom, but it doesn't work on this setup. And add a hyperlink to a status updates folder if you're going to keep track of them and use them for historical reference. It's also nice when you're sending out status updates if somebody's like, oh, this is an interesting project. They click to the status updates and they can look back to the beginning and see, oh, there's a status update with the charter, and I can actually see the charter. Like, this connects everything all the way down if you do a structure like this. Anyway, you were going to say?
Question. So we actually just did a retrospective on a boarding project, and they gave us feedback in that sometimes seeing the whole project schedule through the weekly meetings, you lose people that aren't specifically assigned or had anything to do with specific tasks. So they recommended us to use rather main agenda items to cover, usually send during the weekly update, and then try to keep that in track. Any recommendations there?
Dragging everyone through the weeds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. When I was doing the same kind of project onboarding that Camille was doing, I just had a weekly meeting, and I'd have my project schedule for me, and then I'd go, okay, these are the important things, and I'd put them into a little table at the bottom of my meeting notes every week, and I'd say, this is what we need to focus you guys on, and that's all they go through. Do they have access to the full project schedule? Well, if they want to. Some people love it. Some people are like project management crazy and love living in the weeds with me in project management, but most of the time, people just want to stay high level and say, just tell me what I need to do.
Nerd.
And I think
Project management nerd.
Yeah.
I think too, the communication plans to help bake a lot of that stuff out. Like, like the executives aren't going to care about the weeds. They just want to know when the project's going to be completed.
Yep.
That's
Know
gonna
your
help
audience.
define a lot of that.
They did mention to have a maybe smaller audience and actually go through the actual project schedule to see the overall progress of different tasks with a smaller audience.
And one way I've seen to do that is if you take advantage in Smartsheet of the fact that you can collapse things, then you just collapse everything, and then you only expand into as much as you want to see. So you're like above the weeds, and you can drill down if you need to, but you're not showing all the weeds and walking through them. You can kind of keep things rolled up at a high level. That seems to help too. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so here's an example weekly status update. Here are the 3 things we accomplished. Use hyperlinks for deliverables for things as much as you can so that people can click through and see what they need. And some best practices. Be concise. If at all possible, keep your updates to a single line. It forces you to be really, really concise, which helps because executives don't want to read a blurb of text telling the story about what's happening. They just need to know this happened, this happened, this happened. Okay, this is executive level consumption. Keep it concise. Bold the highlighted words to make it easy to skim read because not everybody cares about the same things, so make it easy. send an email after the weekly coordination meeting. So meet with the team, figure out what's going on, what you're going to do, and then just kind of send off a broader note to help everybody know what's going on. Save each status update into a folder for the future reference. See the footer hyperlink, so see previous status updates. So each time you send one out, make sure you put a copy back in that folder for people to see. Questions, comments? What is a project feedback survey? So here's a copy of the example one that we have. Introduction: while we strive to meet or exceed expectations on each project, there is always room to improve. This survey helps to gather feedback about the project owner's experience with the project and identify improvement areas. This survey also helps to objectively measure the success or failure of each project in specific areas and overall. And the scores are stored in a project feedback survey smartsheet. Again, this is just for the onboarding, or for my business operations projects, the operational efficiency projects, and the project managers on my team working on it. And this is basically how we track to see if they're doing the right things in the right areas and give objective feedback to help see how things are going. Not everything is in the control of the project manager, but they're responsible for it. And this helps us have those kind of conversations when there's things that we need to address.
We used to send these to customers. Out of maybe 21 filled it out.
Yeah, do you think there's more
Even
so
with
than
us
just
going back,
feedback?
"Wee."
Is there something here also just like socially to add closure to the project and let everybody know like it's over, right? We all agree it's over.
Yep.
We're talking about it.
We have ours in the
Reviewing.
formal retrospective, and we
Yeah.
always make sure that we get the feedback there because the surveys don't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think, but obviously the obvious, the elephant in the room is, yeah, you do it to get feedback to improve itself. It's that.
And close the
retrospective.
project to make sure
But
everybody
there is
knows
that,
it's
like,
closed, it's
we all
done.
know, right?
Hand off is,
Yeah,
Yep.
I like,
Even if you don't want the feedback, it's probably worth doing to close the.
The
survey.
ceremony
Yeah.
itself has value, whether or not the data has value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I like the use of a survey to give critique and hopefully improve the project manager,
Exactly.
where the retrospective is more organizationally, I think. How do we get better running projects?
I just asked questions such as, how was the project? Well, not
Yeah.
so basic. I asked questions about the project management project tool, how we communicate, because we don't, like I said, people don't fill out surveys. So I've started adding them to the end of my retrospective. How are we doing? Like,
Enlightening, yeah.
Surveys are hard to get.
Uh-huh.
I like that.
and so far they've been very honest.
It's good.
Whether I like it or not.
It's better to have honest feedback.
The other thing is, depending on how you run retrospectives, the survey may be your way of getting individual feedback, where in a meeting, sometimes people don't want to voice
Yeah.
concern.
There's lots of ways to do surveys. This is by no means perfect, but it's a good thing as part of the ceremonies of wrapping things up to gather the feedback and get something to know how well things worked. How do you invite the project owner to complete a project feedback survey? Here's an email that you can use, and you just update it with the project link. And hey, spend 5-10 minutes and fill out this survey. Help us know how we were doing.
One thing that I've seen working is, since we don't do surveys, but we have a retrospective with the customer speaking.
Mhm.
We understand that us being there is just to learn from their experience, not to fight back or object to their
Yes.
comments.
Yeah.
Because you can get into arguments and all that.
Oh,
But,
yes.
But just listening as to what their experience was, why it was upsetting for them, what worked, what didn't work,
Mhm.
and just accepting that as feedback, something that's going to help us in the future. Whatever is in the past, in the past. So it's helped just listening and get their perspective.
Yep.
Of how things went.
I actually didn't include anything here in terms of retrospectives, but they're a powerful tool to use instead of surveys, especially if people aren't filling out surveys.
Yeah.
You just have a meeting and you walk through questions. There's disadvantages because not everybody's going to say what they would say in a retrospective as if they would. So you got to know your audience and know what works best.
Yeah.
This is just an approach, but you can do retrospectives too.
And we collect those comments, and then we had it's been a time since we haven't had one, but we go through those and see what kind of thing we can incorporate into our next projects.
Yeah, continual process improvement. Love it.
The survey have a place to put the evidence, the empirical evidence that the project success criteria had actually been fulfilled or met.
There is a question that asks that explicitly, and each one of these is just like a 1 through 5, how well did we do? And then at the end of each section, there's a comments box, like give us more detail, more color, that kind of stuff. But yes, you got to make sure that you ask somebody, did we explicitly get the success criteria that we defined completed? Are you proud of these objectives, like the what we met? There's some stuff about that. Yes, that's important. Ryan sends out the invitation email for the operational efficiency program projects to those project owners. This survey can be filled out independently or with the project manager, like in a retrospective style, for direct feedback based on the preference of the project owner. With Clint, he just likes me to just send it to him. He'll just fill it out when he has time. So that's what I do. As a project manager, you should be familiar with these feedback questions so you're aware of how your project will be graded once the project is completed. Like, I had to pound this with my project managers. I'm like, guys, if you're going to be doing this, this is what you'll be graded on. This is the stuff. Make sure that you're aware of it as you go through your projects. And what are the project feedback survey questions? Net Promoter Score. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff because we don't have the time, but it's here if you want to see it. Each section has a comment box, and you can see we do a Net Promoter Score question, general questions, requirements analysis questions,
These are
initiation
general
and monitoring
for the project.
execution.
These are not specific to the charter.
No, these are template. Every project has these, because it's about how do we do project management, not about the specifics of this project. Non-monitoring closing. Let's see if we can find the one Keith was asking about. Overall, I feel the effort was successful in meeting the approved deliverables, kind of phrasing it in that we talked about stuff, you approved them, did we meet those deliverables?
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Not all questions are equal. That one should hold 80% of the weight. And if somebody says no, then
well,
you can't count your
it's the very last question. So it's like you walk them through all this stuff and you're like, was this really successful? Did we really do what we wanted it to accomplish?
You're trying to make them say yes 3 times a week so they can say yes at the end.
Partially.
I asked because I worked at a company where most of the projects were not worth doing. But the people who had the authority to initiate a project had the authority to do so. And they always made up really strange, like useless, like success criteria and always managed to meet them somehow. Like they made them up after the fact. I was like, yeah, we got like a 0.005% increase on sales on the website. In reality, that's well within the margin of error. So they would call that success. And this happened all the time. And it's like, it was just such a waste of development team effort at all.
Yeah.
And that was the marketing team that just did it time after time. So
That's just marketing in general.
You should quit and go work at Alianza.
He used to be a PM on a
Yeah.
Is that sort of a lack of charter? Like if it's like an honest charter up front?
well, it's certainly a lack of honesty somewhere, but I'm not sure
It's
exactly
not how
where.
we ran projects.
Fair enough. Key takeaways. Let me just get to the wrap up. We're running out of time here. Doing project management is different than just accomplishing a group of tasks. Treat it that way. Use it and employ it when it's appropriate. There are lots of industry standard best practices for how to successfully do project management championed by PMI, documented in the PMBOK. If you want to know more, there's lots of stuff. Using these best practices will help you be more successful on your projects. That's the whole point. Leverage the templates and the tools available to help with managing a project. Reference this training as a functional resource guide for your first few projects to kind of get an idea how to incorporate it. Start with the end in mind by occasionally reviewing the project feedback survey to make sure that you're covering the right things as you go through the life cycle. Attend regular project management guild meetings like this to learn more in-depth skills, discuss PM problems across the company, and learn from other project managers, because not everybody does project management the same way. So it's good to get alternate perspectives. And that, my friends, is the end. Any questions?
Is there a PMBOK official document?
It's a inch thick manual I can show you at my desk.
Is it public? Is it like public domain, or is it you have to be in the
Well,
PMI and
if
pay
you
dues?
search for a PDF version, you can find one. Technically, it's a published document that you're supposed to pay for and purchase.
By paying the PMI dues.
You don't have to pay PMI dues, you can just buy it on Amazon. But if you join the PMI, then you also get one, yes.
Yes. You can get a PDF of it. Not like a wiki or something.
You can also pay $100 to the guild and you can get your copy.
I will rent it to you for $5 a minute. It's cheap.
See, look at the one.
Pay $100. Yes, pay $100. I'll get you the $60 book.
But yeah, it's available if you ever want to see it. It sits collecting dust on my desk most days, but yeah.
I've got one too, although
I was like, I've got
Camille's
it.
got it.
It
So.
seems like something we might want to add to our Alianza book library.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Is it actually a healthy reference, or is it?
Oh, yeah.
Is it something that like, it's like the 2013 version is super old and they haven't updated it?
We update it all the time. We're on
Yeah.
version 6.
Yeah, there's.
Because I got my CAPM certification in version 5. That's the book I've got. But when I go for this one after Thanksgiving, we're getting the 6.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll put 5 up on the shelf. But yeah, it's good. It's healthy for a reference. Like when you're like,
Yeah.
what really is the project sponsor versus the project owner, and like who owns what, and like what if, like the project roles. I use the PMBOK a lot to kind of go through and go, what's the right way to define what the criteria is? The criteria that he read about the project charter, that's legit right out of PMBOK. I've heard that before, and I don't remember why I didn't include it here. I've got it on my notes to add. But yes, it's a useful reference.
It gives you detail on like, hey, if I'm going to go create a project schedule, what are all the activities I might need to do, and what are those defined as? You know.
It's just maintained by the PMI group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, you tailor, like,
Yeah,
I have never done procurement,
Yeah, me neither.
and there's a whole section on procurement.
Holy
in the
crap.
PMBOK. But
Fun stuff. Not necessarily a career point. But anyway, I have a question for you guys. What did you learn? Did you find this as a useful reference training to go through?
I learned to not ignore you so much while you're going through this in meetings.
Awesome.
Burn.
I'll take it.
The thing I like about it is it gives Alianza kind of a standardized language to use when we're talking about projects.
Yeah. What is a project schedule and stuff?
I learned that I have so much more room to grow, and I felt shame at so many. The slide of everything that goes wrong was like, oh. Especially when he said, oh, it still happens. I was like, yeah, no.
Yeah, that stuff happens even in projects that I've been working on for a long time. Like this is common interaction problems working with humans. The point is, the more you follow the good best practices, you'll avoid more of them than you used to.
I think what's good about this guild is like our service providers have project managers, the big ones.
Yeah.
It's like the big one.
And if you've had like formal training, you start using terms that other project managers get.
Common vocabulary.
And this is not like when I work with project managers who are not using those terms, I feel like I have to coach and maybe guide more. And I don't know if that's every project manager that does that, but if we can give that semblance to the project managers on our service providers side, it's just going to make them want to work with us better.
Agreed.
And that's I think one of the side benefits of this guild is we're going to start talking the talk, and it's not that you didn't know things, but it'll be good.
I learned that if we have a project manager, we would need to have access to OneNote, and Dropbox would have to switch from Linux to something that supports Dropbox. And we would, I would ask for copies of those weekly update meetings to be sent to all the team members on a weekly basis as well.
Yeah. But often in projects, you will find people that are like, hey, I'm interested in that. Okay, great. I'll add you to the stakeholders list, and you like expand who you send the weekly status updates to. That's a really, really powerful tool that people don't always understand. And I actually was having conversations this week with my project managers about, guys, no, seriously, we need to send weekly project status updates, and not even project updates, like program status updates for like problem management stuff. And yeah, it's super useful.
Yeah, I think what I got out of it today was, some of the, like even in the meeting, it's best practice to collect it all and send it out right afterwards. There's some meetings that that I'm in where I'm collecting notes, but I'm trying to also actively influence and
facilitate the meeting.
Yeah, and so it's like, well, where do I really want to do that, and do I really want to collect all that right then? And and also just knowing that it's a best, knowing that it shows up as like, no, like general consensus is yes, that's the way you should be doing it, and taking the time to interrupt the meeting, because sometimes it slows down. Actually, some of the, this is like jumping on the Noah bandwagon of beating you up in meetings. Sometimes when we sit in meetings, I'm like, okay, we're going to just take a break here while Ryan takes notes. I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm like, is this really the best use of our time, or is it the best meeting, or is it not the best meeting? But there's, like just understanding like, yeah, maybe that is the best use of our time, and like it doesn't really work without that. Is helpful.
Yeah.
And one thing I see Ryan do to kind of negate that, right, is he'll have Ariel actually take notes for him or something like that.
Yes.
Having somebody else do almost that secretarial role while he's having the conversations and telling them what to put in notes.
Should have called him Brian.
That's what I need.
So
I need a sidekick.
it's the responsibility of the project manager to make sure that the project charter gets filled out. But if you realize that you're going to be in a meeting with a whole bunch of people and it's going to be hotly contested or a lot of input or a lot of opinions, or it's just going to be a lot that you need somebody to specifically own the facilitation role in the meeting, then find somebody else to do the meeting note portion of it, which is what I've been doing in our meeting with Ariel with the end user documentation. Is Ariel's the project manager, she's running the project charter, but I kind of wear the facilitator hat in a lot of those meetings just to kind of facilitate the right discussion, make sure to coordinate what needs to be documented when, and
Being explicit about your role here. is
knowing
taking
your role.
notes.
Yeah.
So I love inviting Ryan to some meetings because you get this, and he'll be like, "Do you want me to scribe?" Yes, thank you so much.
Welcome.
So
I like that game.
if you volunteer for it, it's super helpful for them.
Yeah. Same thing like with the AWS hack. Steven's like, "Will you come and take notes in this meeting?" Like, okay, sure. Just fly through and do stuff. Like, it helps. I'm like 1 point short of being ADD, like positive. Like I'm almost there, but not
I
quite.
don't think that's true. I think you're there.
But taking notes in meetings, taking notes in my meetings helps
Uh-huh.
focus,
I have the
like
hyperactivity.
do something to stay active and engaged. And it turns out to be a useful skill that people enjoy. So, final questions, comments, stuff?
You want to
Sometimes
be, by the way.
If you don't understand the context of all the things that you're taking notes on when filling up a project charter, people will just probably think, let's cut to the chase and tell me what I need to do. But I mean, understanding the purpose of each section and the importance and how it ties into different things helps like really put your mind into it. And if you're gonna have a say into like the problem or the success criteria, that's where your mind should be.
Yes.
Because we tend to zoom out, especially when we go to meetings. And if you're not there, you're not.
Yeah, it's kind of a way to pull collectively the project team up to look at things from a bigger picture perspective. And sometimes even the pauses and the breaks and the silence in between things helps people to just kind of spend the time to think about what other risks do we really have, or really what should be the stuff that should be in scope or out of scope, and like have those conversations with the team. It's helpful.
Yeah, but I think. Sorry, not.
You can.
Separate subject, actually, going back a little bit, but on the scribing and scoping and having someone else take notes, I think there's a critical aspect of that, of having the project manager still be the responsible party.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at that and I think, man, Braden just came out to me with these five meetings that I had in the last 2 days, this week with our customers. And some of those, I'm taking notes furiously. Actually, my laptop is sitting on a table so I can present. I've got my mouse and sheets of paper and a pen that I'm putting my notes in because that's all I've got. Right?
Sure.
So I'm like, and it'd be great if he was sending that out, but it's critical that actually I send the updates. It can't come from him because then it creates this confusion of who's really running, who's in charge.
Yeah.
And so there's still that role of responsibility from the PM to own that own the notes even.
Yes. Like this gets into the whole realm of effective meeting management, and it's a matter of knowing your role and prepare for it. If you know that you're going to need somebody that's going to have to be a scribe in a meeting, prepare for it beforehand. If you know that you're going to need somebody that can be a neutral facilitator in a meeting that's not you, prepare for it. Ask somebody to come in and play that role. Like be aware of what the roles are, what their functions are, what their uses are, and be preempted to know what to prepare for to have successful meetings in that way.
I'm coming Monday. So I already said yes.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. I think we'll call it there.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
That's great.
Thanks.
By the way, Brian.
Hi, I'm Dave.